What happens when we actually pay attention to what we eat and where it comes from? Hello and welcome to Life Beyond the Numbers, the podcast for leaders and people curious about creating a more fulfilling work life. I'm your host, Susan Ní Chríodáin, and I help people in leadership make sense of themselves and their work life, especially in times of uncertainty, transition and difficulty. I'm also the author of the award-winning book, Leading Beyond the Numbers. And I love real conversations, the ones that invite you to truly listen, that create space for reflection, to be heard and to feel understood. Together with leaders and fellow explorers, we shine a light on what shapes our work lives, both from the outside and the inside. Join us for stories, insights, and perspectives that keep humanity at the heart of work. Well, today I am delighted to welcome Max MacGillivray to Life Beyond the Numbers. Max, you're so welcome.
Susan, it is an utter pleasure to be on here today with you. I've got to ask you a question. What's your favourite fresh produce?
Ooh, something green. Well, actually, do you know what? It's probably spuds.
Is it? Oh, yeah, okay.
Potatoes, for those who don't know what a spud is. But yeah, I mean, that is my go-to comfort food.
Yeah.
And just, it's so Irish. There's something so, I know that you probably say it's so British, but it's so Irish.
No,
Irish really identify with spuds.
Actually, it's a really good point. And the reason for sort of taking you down this route, I've been doing a lot of broadcasts about a big show that we're covering in California. So I've been broadcasting with lots of people from the States, and I'm opening the gambit with, what's your fresh produce, rather than trying to be too serious from the get-go. And actually, I hadn't thought about this before, Susan. I suppose it's symbiotic as to the answer that people give is a good understanding as to where they come from. You say potatoes because of perhaps your fantastic heritage. I was speaking to a chap from California yesterday, and his retort was that it was pineapple. And I said, "Oh, describe me this pineapple." And he said, "Well, I was on the beach in Hawaii with my girlfriend at the time, and we were eating this pineapple, and it was the most delicious thing. The waves were crashing, but Max, it was slightly rude. Brian, how is it slightly rude eating this amazing pineapple?" Well, halfway through, my girlfriend at the time asked me to marry her. And I said, "Can I finish the pineapple first?" So it's quite an interesting one when you ask people. I know there's another lovely chap. Where was he from? He was from New York, and he was talking about being in Ohio with his parents on the veranda eating papaya. And you could just imagine that sort of white picket fence veranda thing, mum and dad, and then the rocking chairs. And it was just the whole ambience of the way that he described it. So you know, I'm settling out with potatoes. They've got papaya and they got pineapples. But no, I love your potatoes. Thank you.
3 Ps. And what about you then, Max? Right back at you.
Mango, because I have been so fortuitous to have been stood under a mango tree in Ghana with one of Ghana's best mango growers, and he looked through this quite large mango orchard plantation farm, and he picked the best mango for us that was just coming ripe. And he had this knife that he must have had for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. And he cut it in these amazing hands, these hands of the soil. And he opened it up and we ate this mango. And so that whole, I love mango ever since. But it's that tangibility that every time I eat mango, I see Mauritius, I think his name was. I see him and I see his slightly bloodshot eyes because he was in his 80s, but this big smile as I enjoyed this produce and this tree that was 20 years old. So yeah, mango every time.
And that, I mean, you've just brought me down a road of fresh produce now in my head, because when I went to live in Africa, and speaking of Africa as well, first, which was back in 2003, it was the first time I ever tasted passion fruit.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I didn't even know things like that existed. Yeah. And actually, I began to realize that fruit and veg had a taste, because we've been so distanced from that. Just to finish the potato before I hand back to you, I used to go to the market, and in Uganda, they would call potato Irish. And I always got such a kick about asking for a kilo of Irish.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. A kilo of Irish. Make it a ton. More than merry. There's a fantastic chap in our sector called Richard Diplock, and he runs a very large tomato business down on the south coast. And I actually had him on Tears once. He'd probably be embarrassed me saying this, but he was describing about the first time he sees children eat tomatoes off the vine in their greenhouse. And their greenhouses are very, very, very big entities now. There's sort of like 15 hectares of glass, all for growing magnificent tomatoes. And they do lots of school tours. So you can imagine these school kids come in and they just see the shape and size of this thing growing amazing tomatoes. And they'll say to the children on particular vines, go choose your tomato. And it's that taste of a tomato, and he's absolutely convinced, I'm convinced with him, that if you can get a young individual at that sort of age eating a tomato, you've got them for life. It's all about the taste, it's all about the flavour. And he and I always say, what in comparison to a Pop-Tart, something horrible from the world of ultra-processed foods, in comparison, having a tomato, if you can get that younger individual having it. Can I tell you another story?
Well, before you do,
go.
I want to come in with the tomatoes, because this is amazing, because my father grew tomatoes. He worked for an organization that grew tomatoes, and he was the manager of the glass houses. And I can still smell the tomatoes.
Yeah.
And I didn't like them then, because I think we were inundated with tomatoes. But now we have some growing in our very wee back garden here in Oxford. We have a lovely little tomato plant, and the tomatoes are delicious.
Yeah.
So please go ahead with your story.
I went through Africa. I rode a motorbike from London to Cape Town to promote agriculture and fresh produce. It was 18,000 kilometers, 18 countries, but the two motorbikes that we did it on, they did 19 countries, which is a story for another time. And I got very kindly, if it's okay to name the company, I very kindly got sponsored by Pink Lady Apples. And when I came back, I would do this madcap school presentation with my bike. I did it to 50 schools, and I performed at Chris Evans Car Fest about it. One particular school, at the end of the presentation, if I was lucky, Pink Lady Apples would have a little white van come up with a couple of cartons of Pink Lady Apples. And at the end, I'll be handing out segments of apples. And there was a 12-year-old boy who's loitering in the corner, and he wouldn't come up and join all of his mates and have a piece of apple. I spotted him and went up to him and said, young man, would you like a piece of apple? And he said, here it comes, 12 years old, I've never had any apple in my life. And this was in Huntingdon, a relatively middle-class area. So I said, try some. And so he had a bit of this apple. And to me, it's a bit like, Susan, it's a bit like if you've been colorblind all your life, and then someone puts on those magic glasses. So he ate this piece of apple, and Pink Lady apples I've got one here, are fantastic in the way that I think they're sort of created for kids, because there's a slight fizz to them, and they're gorgeous. And he said, could I have an apple? So, young man, you have the apple. And I spoke to the headmaster afterwards and said, what's the makeup? I said, yeah, there's a bit of a story here. And I said, headmaster, could I ask a favour? There's obviously, he's never had an apple. I bet he's got brothers and sisters likewise. If we sent a carton of apples to you, could you forward them on to the family? Yeah, no problem. So we did that. And then the headmaster phoned me up a week later to say that the mum had come in tears because she knew that she wasn't feeding her kids correctly. This carton of apples had turned up by the school. They had friends round, and they all thought, well, what do we do with these things? Well, shall we eat? And now they're addicted to Pink Lady apples. And it comes back to that thing again about that little individual, that 12-year-old having that slice of apple. Susan, you know the stats as well as I do. 6 out of 10 kids don't know where fresh produce comes from. And we've got this huge monster of, as we intimated earlier, ultra-processed foods and the whole burden on the NHS. But I do think, see what you think, I do think it is changing, because people are now awakening to the fact that ultra processed foods are bad, and the TikTok generation know this, and they want to have healthier outcomes, and they want to have whole foods rather than food with ingredients. So I'm quite positive. I'm quite excited about the sector. Hopefully I don't have to thump my way through Africa to get a 12-year-old kid to eat some apple again.
Well, it sounds like it was a pretty good trip. But when has this disconnection happened? Because let's say, for example, Max, I mean, I grew up in rural Ireland, and my uncle had a farm. We drank milk straight from the cow. It wasn't pasteurized. A lot of kids now don't even know milk comes from a cow. And we were also lucky enough to grow much of our own vegetables and so on. We had our meat directly. Everything came from the land. Yep. And then we were surrounded by sea. So also we had all of that. But yep. I suppose that's part of me and my story.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm guessing in the UK and many other countries, it was always like that too. But somewhere along the line, we drifted away from what was
I
good
have the
for us.
Susan. I have the date. It is. It is 1851. It was the year of the poisoning ban coming in to stop arsenic poisoning in the UK. Why do I say that? It's something like 1851 or 1871, because that's when the split between the majority of the UK population were living rurally to then living on an urban basis, and we're now 9 generations on. And that's when that disconnect happened. That's when we lost the connection with the lands. And if we want to be critical about about the agricultural sectors, we've then created this sort of them and us type thing. What is great about here comes drumroll with the likes of Jeremy Clarkson, as the wordology goes, he's opened the gate to what we do, and I feel that the general public are a lot more receptive to finding out what we do now within the farming community. So yeah, it is 1851 when that divide happened, and now whatever the figures are, it's something like 92% of people live. Don't quote me on that. Live on an urban basis, and so have no understanding. And likewise, most teachers come from an urban background, so they don't have an understanding. But the agriculture sector does do some fantastic things. We have the likes of Leaf Open Farm Sunday that once a year, I think it's about 4,000 farms will open up their farms to allow. But the problem with that is it tends to attract rural families and not families. But the messaging is getting there, and so many people within our sector are so good on social media and getting that, and coming back to the likes of Jeremy Clarkson, a number of agricultural institutions, universities have seen a huge peak of people wanting to get into agriculture because they can see it's fun. There's nothing wrong with being an accountant, Susan, but actually coming into the sector of working on the land, you might not earn a fortune, but it might be a bit more fulfilling than sitting behind a desk. So
I suppose it depends on what you want and what you value in life, Max, but also what you're aware of. Because if you grow up urban,
yeah,
then you're not even aware that these opportunities
absolutely.
exist, are you? And
Yeah.
I do think I know you say it could be very fulfilling and everything. It is hard work. I mean, people that live off the land or work off the land or depend on the land perhaps for a living,
Yep.
that's also a lot of effort.
It's a way of life.
Mm,
It is.
yes.
It
It's a
is.
vocation.
It is, yeah, and they're doing good. Yeah, yeah, of course they're doing good because they're conserving the land. They are such great caretakers. Wrong word. Shepherds. Wrong word. They're so good at looking after their land and their livestock. We are some of the best farmers in the UK, but it's not. Especially at the moment, where we've got a couple of things that are battling against us, whether that be income, so farmers aren't getting an income from the product, and also the weather. We've had such bizarre weather over the last 4 or 5 years. We've just recorded a very poor harvest this year. So yeah, so you need to be very brave to be a farmer, or very rich. What's that joke, Susan? How do you make a fortune? Start off with a large fortune and buy a farm, and then you'll have a fortune because you keep on having to invest into it.
Having said all of that, we need them. We need people to use the land for what it's there for as well, to help produce fresh produce.
Yeah, yeah. When I was at agriculture college, they always used to say about the best crop rotation of them all was the 4 Bs. So as a farmer, you would work out, if you're an arable farm especially, you'd be working out what you'd be planting in the same field for the next 4, 5, 6 years. They used to say in a juggling manner that the best crop rotation was the 4 Bs. So one year barley, the next year bungalows, and the next year Bermuda. The 4 Bs: barley, bungalows, Bermuda. Or the unfortunately slightly sad joke now is if you're going to buy land, buy it where you can see street lamps, because that means that you're more likely to get planning permission to convert that backfield into chimney pots. So there's a loss of appetite and pressure for building, or for renewable solar panels, or for AD. But Susan, it's evolution, not revolution. It's the way that it's changing. But then again, I'm a globalist. I'm not sure what that really means, but in the respect of I've with my travels. Let me go back to my mangoes situation. There's an amazing British-run business based in Ghana, and if you buy any slice and dice fruit from M&S, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, it's very likely to have come from this amazing business, Blue Skies. In Blue Skies, in the factory unit, they employ 4,500 people. And there's 35,000 people that work off the ecosystem of that business. They're an absolute powerhouse. And the amazing British chap who set this business up 25 years ago by chopping pineapples under a palm tree in Accra, he says, Max, we're like a social enterprise before social enterprise is set up. So they've got that one, and they've got a business in Benin, Brazil, Egypt, and South Africa. So that's all good. But what's the downside of that? All of their product is air freighted to us every day from all of those countries. And there's a lot of people who are very anti that. But their argument is actually they've got this community of 40,000 people in one country alone, let alone the others, that they're supporting by sending this product over. And those planes are in the air anyway, and those planes are getting more efficient. And so if overnight, if we stopped taking their product, that whole community in all those countries I've just mentioned are probably going to be in a very, very poor state. So coming back to that bit, yeah, British farming we have to support, but I think we need to support farmers globally, Susan.
Well, globally, absolutely. And the food systems and what goes around the food system, because I think everything's related. And when you don't know where your food comes from or how food is produced,
Yep.
you just don't see the unintended consequences, perhaps, of what you've just spoken about as well. And I was thinking about education there, you know, the 12-year-old kid who's never had the apple that suddenly eats an apple. And that's the future too, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't even know what the question is, but it's like,
Susan, let me interact because it's Jack, because there's quite a good point here. Wherever you go in the world, two people have been there before you. The guy selling Michael Jackson t-shirts and the guy selling Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I was at a conference recently, and you'll see this. I see this all the time within our sector of farming and horticulture, fresh produce. There was I've forgotten his name, but there's a professor from Chatham House. So those that don't know, Chatham House is a think tank in London full of the most amazing intellectual people that steer strategy in certain areas. And we'd had this very proficient, eloquent speech from this professor, just laying out on a neutral basis as to the lie of the land in respect of food globally. And this chap stood up and he said, why can't retailers pay us growers more money? And it's a very valid question. And he sort of rocked on his feet a little bit in front of, it must be 700 people at this event. He said, actually, it's not the retailers are at fault. That the people that are dominating food globally are the multinational grain companies and the multinational food businesses. It's them, sir, that you need to tackle, because they've created this cartel globally. They are the ones that are forcing this scenario. They're the one, and he didn't say this. It's reminiscent. Susan, you remember the whole tobacco scenario where it was just a thing to smoke tobacco, and thank the Lord we got that change. And there's so many people from the tobacco sector moved into those food businesses, and they used everything that they learned on a marketing perspective from selling fags, tobacco, into ultra processed foods and other foods. So those foods in companies have sort of got control of our food system. But I do believe that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that they're realizing that they can't continue like this, because sales are dropping. We won't even start on weight loss drugs because that's affecting sales with them significantly. So I'm sort of hoping that they will come into our sector, start investing in our sector. But 3 years ago, at another conference, they had a vice president of, we won't name him, but a very, very big food multinational. And he did his PowerPoint presentation about how great they were. And someone stood up and said, sir, when are you going to start investing in a banana business? And he took all of 2-3 seconds to look and think and say, when you could show me how to make money out of bananas, we'll invest. So this is the point, just for the people listening in, that the food multinationals, they're making double-digit margins from what they sell. A banana company might have a turnover in the UK of 500 million, but they'll be making sub 1.5% margin on it. They're not allowed to have a brand on it. They can't do anything to leverage their return. So there's this complete skew towards the branded companies that are allowed to collect that margin and to continue to present us food that's not too good for us, whilst the whole food sectors, these sort of guys, they make so little margin that they can't invest in marketing, they can't invest in product development, they're just surviving. But let's try and find a silver cloud. It is changing. People want to eat more whole foods. So I'm just hoping that those multinationals will realize that they're going to have to give up their Pop-Tarts and invest in a banana company, or, Susan, a potato company, and because that does more for us, and it's going to help us in the respect of not being a burden on our various health systems.
And I think the point is so well made, the health systems, and you've brought it in a couple of different ways. We've mentioned the diet pills, or we've got an obesity epidemic in the world, malnutrition, because malnutrition
Oh,
is overnutrition as well as undernutrition.
yeah.
It's both. And
It's, but
I
it's
keep
gone.
going back to
It's gone.
legislation, Max. Like, do we have to legislate? Common sense has long gone out the window, it seems, in a way. We're eating foods that our grandparents would turn in their graves.
Yeah, it's like you go back to pictures of people in the 50s. You never saw a fat person. Personally, I don't think legislation works within the UK. There's all this talk about a sugar tax. I think the thing that works is creating societal change. If my little drop in the ocean of getting that 12-year-old to eat an apple is going to get that family to put down the mechanically recovered burgers that they're having at a barbecue and start eating. If we could all do that, I look at my kids. So I've got Susan. I've got too many kids. I got three. Have I got three? Yes, I got three. Three.
Jesus,
Sorry,
the poor
I got
children.
three kids and three dogs. I always get confused. And I look at what they eat, and they're all gym bunnies, and it's fantastic. And they're all very. I feel guilty when I go out with them because it's like, Father, that's your second pint of beer. Should you be doing this? So no, I need that because I got you three. I need something I need that sedative. But just watching them and watching their peer group, they're not interested. I'm being optimistic. I do think there's hope. And creating that societal change when the makers of, let's pick on Pop Tarts, realize that no one's buying their Pop Tarts, they'll think, oh my God, what we're going to do? We're going to have to go over here. We're going to have to, oh, right, what's all this healthy stuff over here? Let's investigate that. Let's get into it.
I mean, that's again another point well made. It comes down to the power of the people, the
Yep.
power of the consumer, and that is going to change the market more than anything else. Going to
Yeah.
change.
And Susan, it's so quick. It's so reactive. I've done quite a lot with government of late, and it's so slow. And it's so politics, and that's not a criticism of government. That's just the way that government is structured. And let's not even start on these big food multinationals and the lobbying that they're able to do. But if we could get a whole tranche of a certain generation to be eating that rather than Pop Tarts, that if it's affecting the bottom line of those large food multinationals, they're going to go in a different direction and chase the buck where they're actually making money rather than trying to sell Pop Tarts. So yeah, I don't think we should rely on government within the UK because it's just too. Oh, we're going to cross another line. The National Food Strategy that was set up by Mr. Dimbleby at the bitter end of the Conservative Party. Fantastic strategy. It was a lot of it was about sugar tax, but it got kicked into the long grass. We have our new government come in. They look at it. They say it's great, but they're not doing anything. Yeah, so we need to create the change from within. But that opens up another dilemma, Susan, that within our sector, we're not that good at being able to have a coherent message to get that awareness, that branding out. Again, the food multinationals, they've got all that money to be able to run mainstream adverts on terrestrial TV and online. You don't see many adverts for nanas, do you, in that respect?
No, and it's an interesting one about the bottom line, the money, the profit, the capitalism. Is capitalism at odds with agriculture, which I don't believe they are at all, because I think we can blame capitalism, but actually what we should be blaming is a short-term focus on profit at
Yep.
any cost. And the
Yep.
cost here is the health of
Yep.
people and the well-being of people.
Yep.
And they're able to afford all the fresh fruit and vegetables that they want, the
Yep.
people in charge. And there's a disconnect there as well between, it's kind of very much like, well, it's your own fault if you're not eating bananas, but it's not. It's the market's fault, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's scare your viewers and listeners. I came across an example recently in Cambridge, in the UK. That what was he? It was a 56-year-old man that had diabetes, and he was being informed by his doctors that he would have to have his left foot amputated because his diabetes was so bad unless he changed his health style. He elected to have his foot amputated because he didn't want to change his eating patterns because he enjoyed the food that he was eating. And can you just imagine that poor? I've got absolute sympathy for this poor chap. He's been so brainwashed, presumably for so many years, as to being a victim of eating this rubbish. When actually, if he'd had a halcyon moment and thought, I'm going to leave. And Susan, he lost his foot. He took that choice. I mean, that's a very extreme example, but you would hope that most people who have a wake up call like that, they'll think, right, no. Going back to my kids, I hope they don't mind me saying this. One of them wanted a diet plan and a gym plan. What did he do? Went on to AI, sorted it out, and he's been following it for 2 years. And I can't keep up with them anymore, not in any shape. And so all the answers are there for us. We've got so much information coming to us, Susan. But I suppose it's just that mindset. Again, I'm coming back to my same thing. It's a comment, not a question. How do we create societal change to get people do good, eat good, do good things, be happy and friendly with them, because our world's a bit tricky at the moment, Susan, isn't it? And it feels like all we need to do is all have an apple together and everything will be fine. There we go.
Or a banana.
Or a banana. Yeah, we just solved everything. We just solved world politics. Have a banana.
So, what took you into this, Max? Because this isn't your pure line of work, I would say. But the way you speak about all of this, you sound like you're a farmer who's like trying to change the world one banana at a time or one apple at a time. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, but it's not your main business.
No. Our main business is we run a recruitment business where we source mid-management to board level people within agriculture and horticulture and fresh produce businesses in the UK and internationally. Combined, a client of mine said, Max, you're very much like a bee. You go to all these flowers, agriculture companies, fresh produce companies in the UK and overseas, and you're picking up pollen, you're picking up information. Because a lot of people, I think, enjoy time with me because they could be sometimes just stuck in their role in their company. And because I'm relatively well traveled, I can tell them about what and I suppose that's my problem. I've seen so many people in 18 different countries in Africa and all across America and Australia that I've got all of this information, and to me it's fairly straightforward that we're all one big global family within agriculture and fresh produce. We're all bad at marketing ourselves. These guys are I'm banging my drum again, within large food multinationals have got the money and have got the evil and are doing bad, whilst we could do so much good. But if I could go around and politely kick lots of people within our sector saying, that amazing banana, stick up on social media, take a picture of yourself with your daughter with that papaya, people will love it. And I'm right, but they've never thought of that. And that it's not a criticism. It's just because I'm a bit, I don't have many skills, but I'm fairly open-eyed as to what I see. And if I see something that I think is going to be a real positive message out there, I'll tell them or I'll help them to get that message out. So I'm not really answering your question. And I got no idea where I'm going, but we've got a couple of other big projects coming along the lines that photography. I love photography, and I've run photography all over the globe with the United Nations and groups out in America and here. And I do think there's a very strong case to be had of having farmers, growers, and their product being shown on a domestic basis to domestic clients or internationally, so people can. This apple's great, but I want to see who actually planted it, who grew it, who picked it, who packed it, who tucked it away in the van to bring it here. So that's what I'm really keen to do, is to have that person with a particular apple. My view being that people like to buy from people. If we could get that magic dust of people being able to see where the produce comes from, that progeny, it will create that magic dust.
And speaking of photography and the magic dust, we don't show the video, Max. So all along when Max has been saying that, he's either pointing to an apple or a banana, just so. But we are talking about them as well. But behind Max is this amazing photograph. I'm guessing of blueberries.
Blueberries, yes. Don't tell anyone that this amazing picture is actually. I didn't take it. It was an award-winning picture from a photography competition in the sector. It just shows. Susan, how would you describe it? It's sort of micro imagery of blueberries that have got slight frost on them. And again, to me, I love that picture, Susan, because all you want to do is you want to dive in and have that blueberry and that lovely ding when you eat it, and you don't get that from a Pop-Tart.
Well, you might if you don't know what that lovely ding is when you eat the fresh. And I think this is part of the issue we have, is that if you're that 12-year-old kid who's never tasted an apple, then why would you buy an apple when you know the taste of the Pop-Tart?
Yep, agreed. Yeah. So, Susan, I'm positive about the future, but we don't have the money to create a big brand. And also, I think just the whole dynamics of media is changing. Back in our day, you and I would have run a full page advert in the Daily Telegraph or the Daily Mail saying eat this apple. But now my kids don't watch terrestrial TV, and they're hardly watching YouTube. Even YouTube is getting dated, so they're all over Snapchat and TikTok. So this market is changing. So that comes into this other thing of influencers. That if we can get those sort of individuals just as part of their daily routine when they're doing whatever they're doing, having an apple or having a banana, creating that positive influence that way, which is great because it's a cheaper method apart from having to buy the influence of an influencer. But again, if we're filling our sectors with fantastic imagery of apples or blueberries or whatever the product is, it would do no harm.
And so then, what's recruitment in that sector like? Because when I asked you what you wanted to speak about today, you said people, people, people.
Well done.
So I wonder, are there lots of people wanting to work in that sector? Is it an easy sector to recruit into? Is it same people moving around? Do you look for cross-pollination because you're the pollinator? What is
Yep.
it like for
Well,
people?
well done. So traditionally, the sector of farming and horticulture, fresh produce, if a company was looking for a commercial manager to work with a retailer, most companies would not look at anyone from outside of the sector. So if someone came in from Vodafone's or Clark's Shoes, they'll get dismissed out of sight because they have no understanding of the sector. They don't know what we're talking about. But we're seeing that's actually changing because those better appointed companies realize that if they bring someone in from a slightly more sophisticated sector, they can learn about apples. We're not talking medical devices here. You don't need a PhD in colostomy bags to know what an apple is. And actually, if you could bring someone in from, say, let's go for extrapolate an example from Vodafone, you think of all the training that individual's going to have had. Even better, there's been some amazing successes in our sector of people from the military coming in. A standard individual from the military potentially has had £250,000 worth of training development put into them. They are by far the best leaders in the world. And if you've got some folk from the military coming in, there's a chap I know that he came out of the military, senior level, and he really struggled to get a job. And he got a job as a glasshouse grower, and he did that for 3 years. And he is just about to now put down 40 hectares of glass on a big project where a recycling centre is taking all the black bin waste from a particular county, creating energy and carbon from that. That's all going to be used to then grow these tomatoes. And this chap from the army is the project lead behind that and having a fantastic time. And as he says, he's doing good. So all those little people are going to be eating tomatoes on the back of it. So Max, get back on track. So there's so many opportunities within agriculture, horticulture, fresh produce. As we intimated earlier, the likes of Mr. Clarkson has excited a younger generation to come in, which is great, which means the pipeline is going to get bigger. There's going to be more people coming through the colleges and universities because they want to come into the sector and do something that's fun, exciting, tangible, doing good, growing good. That's where good SH1T rather than working for Goldman Sachs or other bankers. So again, I'm positive. There's so many examples I can give you, Susan, of people who've started off at a low level. Now, one particular one is the CEO of a fresh produce business, turning over £250 million turnover, and they do all the fruit and veg into Aldi in Northern Europe. And he came from nothing, and it was all just about his personality and the fact that he has such a passion for fresh produce and Labradors. Always helps.
Fair enough. And I've lost my train of thought, which seems to be happening to me a lot these days, unfortunately. I think it's the age thing, Max. It's the age thing. California. As we're recording, you're about to head to California to a show.
Yeah, so I'm in this very, very interesting position where I get commissioned by trade shows in the UK and overseas. I seem to have created this sort of style of video interviews. And Susan, the people that I can't believe this, they actually pay me to go to these shows and do what I do. It's amazing. So I will rock up at these shows and I will find that either the interviews will be pre-orchestrated or I'll just find random people, and I've got a big gimbal camera and I'll just rock up onto the stands. The show we're talking about is the International Fresh Produce Association Global and Produce and Floral Show, which has been held in Anaheim. It's the biggest fresh produce show for North America. It attracts about 35,000 people. And in the morning, they have a conference session with about 3,000 delegates. And they've had at the conference session, they've had the likes of, is it Woz or Oz? Let's go for Oz, co-founder of Apple. They've had the co-founder of Netflix on previously. These big events, they tend to like to get a big name in to draw in. So I'm very fortuitous that there's 4,000 people. I'm right down at the front on my knees with my big press level camera taking photography, and also my video camera to get sort of snapshots. It's great as a photographer because you're seen as being relatively invisible, which means you could just drift in and out, and you pick up so many conversations, Susan, just because no one's really. And then when the actual show happens, so I've got all this sort of intelligence I've picked up from the first bit of the show, and then I'll go up to the Mexican avocado stand and find someone who looks vaguely important and say, "Hello, sir. Hello, madam. My name is Max. I'm being commissioned by the show. Can we have a conversation about your amazing avocados?" "Yes, Max." So I then get my camera up. "So, sir, you know what I'm going to say? What's your favorite fresh produce?" "Well, Max says avocados." "Why avocados?" And off we go. And we do it within 5-10 minutes. And quite often I'll get them to hold the camera, and they find themselves talking direct to camera about how they love Mexican avocados. And I'm behind them with my cameras, my photography cameras, taking pictures. And it's great. I do about two dozen of these over 3 days, the interviews. And then we promote them out. We promote them out on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. And the whole thing garners 150,000 views, and they're trade views. YouTube is great, but I'm always not convinced of the audience of that. Whilst love it or loathe it, LinkedIn it is trade views, and these people love it because you know what most corporate videos are like. They're very formal, but then you got me, eclectic me, turning up, and we get a really human, authentic side out of them, and combined with the photography, it works very well. So yes, I'm very blessed to do events like that, and I have a great relationship with that team, the International Fresh Produce Association, because they're a force for good. They're promoting fresh produce and horticulture and agriculture globally, and they've all got really white teeth.
Of course they do. Of course they do. And there's so much in that, Max, because the way you spoke there and you said, "and they actually pay me," I always find that the people who love what they're doing are almost surprised when they're getting paid for doing it. And I think that's part of what you're showing, perhaps with the people you interview as well, when you meet them, because they love what they're doing, the avocado farmer or whoever. And the important point you made as well about conversation, because that was one of the things I noticed about Beanstalk Global, which is the global side of what you talk about. And it's the create the conversation and not be part of
the conversation. Yeah. So what's the other terminology, Susan? Everyone goes left, go right. I think I've probably, it's also helped with recruitment because I've interviewed thousands of people. So I'm the worst dinner party guest to ever have, because I will find out everything about everyone, and no one will find out anything about me because I don't really like talking about myself. But having that skill set to be able to go into a farm in Swaziland and just rock up on a motorbike, they know I'm coming, and say, "This is amazing. Tell us about your farm. Hold my hand. Let's go." And you just get the best out of them, because again, it's all about being human and authentic. But yeah, as you say, if you can find, I suppose it's a lesson for all of us, isn't it, Susan? If you can find a job that if you can find a hobby that you love, and crikey, someone's very, very happy to pay you for that skill set, is happy days. And if you could hopefully do a little bit of good along the way, it's even better.
And the point about human, I mean, that's what it comes down to, Max, isn't it? It's no matter where you go and who you meet in the world, if you can connect on that human level, you're in.
A lot of people were worried about us doing our trip through Africa because they thought we were all going to die. And all we came across was smiles all the way through. Just two quick anecdotes. When we were in Ghana, we were just coming in. It was the presidential elections coming up. And myself and my riding buddy, we were a bit silly. There was a VIP bunch of 4x4s, and they're moving quite slowly. So we overtook them. And then all the blue lights came up, and it turned out we'd overtaken the vice presidential nominee. And they thought we were Baddens because we had British number plates and all the rest of it. Didn't know who we were. So we got pulled over and this vice president wound down the window and said, search them, search them. Rightly so, because we'd done wrong. And they sped off and they left us with three big SUVs full of armed troops. And so the chap said, who are you? Where are you going from? And we must inspect your luggage. In the morning, we'd had to move out of our digs pretty quickly. And without without crossing the line here, we piled all of our little stuff that we had into our panniers. And I put my dirty underwear in the top of my pannier, then locked it up. So what happens? He said, I need to inspect your luggage. I need to search to make sure you have nothing. So I opened it up. The first thing he sees is my dirty underwear. And he says, you must go. We don't have anything to do with you. And then the other one was in Zimbabwe. We were on the east coast of Africa. We were informed that we will get stopped a lot by the police. And it's not that they're corrupt. They've got no money. So they're always looking to charge bits of money for speeding, as they would say to... So we got stopped about a dozen times. And it would be the same thing. They go, where have you... So we're in Zimbabwe. Where have you come from? We have come from London. From London? Where are you going? Cape Town. Cape Town? You must go. And so that happened a dozen times. So again, I think it's all about having a lovely positive attitude to life. And all we found all the way through was smiles and made friends for life. So I suppose, where am I going with this one? If I always say this to the kids, if just set yourself a challenge. People do walk up Mount Kenya. Is it Mount Kenya?
Garo.
Thank you. Well done. Or bike from Cambodia to Vietnam. Or do something like that. It's such a good thing to do. I went a bit extreme and did the Africa thing. I think about my Africa trip every single day. It was just gorgeous. And I'm in contact with some amazing people. So that would be my challenge to everyone listening in. What is your challenge? Comfort begins at the end of your comfort zone. When I was in... I'll shut up in a minute, Susan. When I was in Morocco on our trip, we stayed with an amazing, great family. And above the kitchen, on the door out, they put it up there for their 3 kids. I forgot. It's all about ambition. That if you just don't get stuck in that 9 to 5. If you are as you are now, where are you going to be in 5 years' time? Whilst if you do something fundamentally that's going to really push you and really challenge you, imagine where you're going to be in 5 years' time. Is something I'm a huge endorser of.
Absolutely. And I think as well, the thing that is coming up for me as you're speaking is so many people fear networking, when actually all it is you could say it was a networking trip through Africa. I mean, it wasn't, but it is, because it's all about connecting on a human level. That's all it is. And we have that within us.
Yeah. And Susan, what I was surprised at is that when you do something like that, and I'm not unique in any of this, but when I asked people, they said, oh, crikey, yes. And you must meet Brian, and you've got to meet Sheila, and you've got to meet Florence, because they could see that we were doing something that was of interest. So absolutely, just keep pushing yourself. You'll never know what will happen.
You'll never know what will happen. Max, if people would like to know more about you, your recruitment, Beanstalk Global, what's the best way to get in touch?
Well, you and I are on the front page of GQ magazine for the December issue. So and then on the inside,
excellent.
If you go online and look up Beanstalk Global, there's enough videos. Luckily, not so much of me. I'm just holding the camera. There's enough collateral out there so that people will be able to trace us down
and find out more about how to connect and reconnect with where your food comes from.
And likewise, I'm only a small cog in this, and I'm developing this thought about trying to do good, but we can't all do it alone. If we can all collectively hold hands and all just have this thought that if we can do good, and I do think a lot of that. Max is holding up an apple and a banana again for those on the podcast. If we can do good in this world, I do think that there's a lot to be said for farming and fresh produce, because it's feeding the world in a sustainable manner, and it's doing good. And there's nothing wrong with being an accountant, but if you want a fulfilling journey in life, get involved with farming, horticulture, fresh produce.
Well, none of the audience are accountants anyway at this stage. We've moved so far. Life has gone so far beyond the numbers now that they've been left behind. But there might be a few. Anyway, thank you so much, Max, for your time today. It's been a journey.
It has. And I'm off to walk 3 Labradors, and wish me luck.
Good luck.
What stayed with me from this conversation was how grounded it was. It was about food, the people who grow it, the people who consume it, and our shared humanity. We often assume that people know where food comes from, and that assumption isn't true. However, awareness changes things and exposure changes things. And when people are curious and when they have the courage to choose differently, even something as simple as not buying a Pop-Tart, other possibilities start to open up. Not just for us as individuals, but for the market as the system begins to respond. Change often begins with small groups of people doing things differently. As Margaret Mead put it, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Perhaps doing good doesn't require us to save the world alone, only to show up more human in it together.
Thank you for listening to Life Beyond the Numbers. If someone popped into your mind while you were listening, maybe a friend or a colleague, send them the episode. Chances are they'll appreciate it too. And if it spoke to you, a few kind words in a review can help others like us find it too.